Vintage motorcycles suck, man. That's just, they make you work for it. And although I do love them most of the time, every now and then you get one that'll just make you question your sanity. So behind me is a beautiful 1972 CB750. I have made multiple videos on this bike, and it is a local customer here. The bike is in for a little bit of service because he was having some electrical issues, specifically in the ignition department. So this thing seemed to be not really firing on cylinders 2 and 3. Now the customer has changed the coils, he has changed the leads here, there's new plugs in it, he has changed the points, and he has changed the condensers, but it just seems like they're not lasting how they should. So he's brought it to me to figure this thing out. Now with a little bit of digging on this thing, I figured the aftermarket points were actually just poor quality and just being inconsistent in how they made contact and therefore spark. So I went ahead and put the factory points back on this thing, and seems to have fired up and ran great, and I was gearing up, getting ready to actually go for a ride on this thing because I want to test it. I want to make sure it is good for the customer. But as soon as I turned the fuel on, we developed a massive fuel leak. So the fuel T-fittings between carbs 1 and 2, the O-rings on either side of those completely gave out on me. So it just developed this massive leak, pouring all over the place, and we can't ride it. So now we have to put this thing back on the lift. I mean, we didn't even get it warmed up. We got to go back on the lift, and we have to actually remove the carburetors, split the rack, and replace the O-rings. So it's a kind of a pain in the butt job, but we're gonna knock it out real quick. Now the fuel line here in between 1 and 2, there's a T-fitting that feeds the carburetors on 1 and 2, so you can see how loose that is. It should take a lot more force to move. So the O-rings in this thing lasted about 2 years, unfortunately. And this kind of goes back to a recent video I made on some CX500 carburetors. And in that, I stressed the importance of quality O-rings, and this bike, I just didn't have any available at the time. So we're gonna go ahead and get these carburetors off of it and replace those O-rings. I have some Viton stuff to go back on it. So to run and go get those O-rings though, took my CB750. That thing's awesome. Anyway, let's get this thing on the lift and get to work. So yeah, vintage bikes will definitely make you question your sanity sometimes. Just when you think you got it right, they bite you back. But with enough effort, enough care, the right parts, and a little know-how, these things will treat you right. You get them up and running, and they're very rewarding. This is always the most challenging part right here. Now the fuel leak in question, I don't want to run it that long, but you will see very quickly how fast it runs out. So we're going to be looking up there between 1 and 2. That's fuel on. You can hear it flowing. And somehow it's not leaking. What on earth? They'll throw you for a loop. You can't script this, I swear. I think it just sealed itself. Oh my god. Okay. Seriously, you cannot script this stuff. 20 minutes ago, that thing was pouring fuel out. And now it's not leaking. Now here's the dilemma, because vintage motorcycles suck. Should I take it off the lift again, roll it back out there, start it up, and put my gear on and hopefully ride this thing? Will it start leaking again? I don't know. I have no idea at this point. This is like waiting for the other shoe to drop. This is a strange one. These things will eternally throw you for a loop. Perfect example. Try again. Okay, it is another day, and you know what? We were laughing last time because this thing kept throwing us for a loop, right? Brought it in here for an ignition issue, thought I sorted it, and then we go to start it up, and of course it's leaking fuel. We bring it back in, and we go to fix the fuel leak, and it's not leaking fuel anymore, and it runs great. So I did nothing and essentially rode around about 10 miles, and it was fantastic. So today, addressing just one more little thing, making sure it's right. I go to fire it up. It's missing on cylinders 2 and 3. So now I gotta pull the tank and then measure out all the ignition stuff again. I'm confident the points are set right. I mean, we've only played 10 miles in this thing. It was running fantastic 2 days ago whenever I parked it. Have done nothing. And yeah. I don't know if I should keep making this video or not. This thing is really throwing me for a loop. Okay, here's where I'm at with this. So I wanted to kind of dive in and redo the basics, or at least recheck the basics yet again. So whenever I originally adjusted this thing, point sets 1 and 4, whenever I was trying to time this thing, it was being inconsistent with getting my timing light to come on. And I just realized I kind of look like Chris Fix right now a little bit. His gloves fit better. But anyway, I wanted to make sure that the points were actually being consistent. So I checked continuity basically between this point right here and then the actual plate right here. So the point would be the only thing making contact. And I did have good continuity there, meaning that we were making a point and breaking it on the point itself. So double check that. Had no reason to believe 1 and 4 wasn't working because it was firing on 1 and 4. So then I checked continuity all the way up to the coil, and it seemed like it was good, but the only issue I found, now backing up a little bit here, these are some aftermarket coils. I think they're MGOs. They don't really fit the best. They're meant to be more of a universal, but this tang right here, the one I have bent 90, it was fitting right in this groove here. And what I think was happening was it was actually pressed so tight against this bracket that it was arcing against it, or at least taking away all of the power. So I went ahead and I just bent that tab out that way, and then that connector or that terminal is not contacting anything, so it shouldn't be making any kind of like short or anything like that. And then I just retested, and now my timing light comes on 2-3. So what I think happened is whenever a coil failed or something like that, there was a poor connection up here within the coil sets, and that was causing the misfire. Because this thing was running perfectly, I rode it about 10 miles, and then I was getting ready to test it again. The customer wanted me to check the mounting bracket on those coils. So I pulled the tank off, adjusted it, and then put it back on, and then that's when it stopped running on 2-3 again. So the only thing that I had messed with was this area. So I've also kind of gone through and I've just double checked all the connections up here, got them all tightened up, and I think that's what our issue was. So time to see if this thing will fire. Now I don't like running things inside the front here, so I'm just going to fire it up for a second, make sure it's actually hitting on 2-3. As soon as I confirm that, I'll shut it down and we'll take it out back. Yep. So, poor connections up top. All of this is basic stuff. It's fiddly, but you gotta look at the basics first. So now I'm going to put the tank on this thing. We'll wheel it out back, and then we will discover another issue that's going to rear its head, seeing as how this project is going. I couldn't write this script if I tried. So the last clip that you guys saw, it seemed I had figured everything out. We had fire on cylinders 2-3 along with 1 and 4, which is important. So we had fixed our ignition issue, and So we had fixed our ignition issue, and I just took this thing for like a 15-mile ride. Flawless. Okay, this thing did great. So great, in fact, that I called the customer and I'm like, hey, I got this thing dialed. Come on over and I'll explain everything that I've kind of went through, explain where the issues lied. And so he comes over and, you know, I go over everything, we settle up, and then he puts his helmet on, we fire up the bike, it's sitting outside, you know, it's still warm from the last time I rode it. Sitting outside idling and, you know, just getting his helmet on and stuff, and all of a sudden, boom, just dies, okay? Complete loss of ignition. So, I mean, it'll crank and crank and crank, you know, main fuse is good, of course, everything else seems to be working, but it will crank and it has just no fire whatsoever. And this is like a whole new issue now. So that was really strange. You know, turned the handlebars a little bit, just kind of like looking around, and got it to fire back up and it sounded smooth again. So in that moment, I'm like, okay, well, you know what? Let me grab my bike. I'll go with you. We'll just go for a little ride in case anything went wrong, you know. So I'm gearing up, and then he points out that the headlight's not coming on. Now, when I rode it the other night, the headlight was on. It was working just fine. So as I'm walking back out there, he's turning the handlebars and the headlight's going on and off, okay? So what that tells me is, of course, a loose ignition in the headlight bucket. Some kind of wire is getting pulled. Now, I have made a video on this exact thing actually on my CB750. So I'm gonna link that in the description, and I'll put a card up right now. But in that video, I had a headlight issue that was intermittent, and it turned out to be a poor connection in the headlight bucket. So after turning it, kind of experimenting, it seems like that was the case. So we bring it back in here, pull the headlight bucket off, find this connection right here. Now this supplies 12 volts to the ignition and the headlight. So this is the feed wire. That switch 12 goes into the right bar control and then back out as headlight and ignition power. So there was actually some black tape over this, and you can feel it wiggling, and that is actually our issue right there. So, of course, this thing developed a new issue again as soon as I tried to, you know, say it was done. So, pretty embarrassing that I actually called the customer over here, and I'm very lucky that he is very understanding. But I don't want to push my luck here, so I need to get this thing done. And I told him, I just dropped him back off at his house. I said, whenever I'm done with this thing, you're going to ride it to California, or you're going to be able to. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this out, and I will put in new correct fitting terminals, and this thing will have proper connection. I know this is a lot of talking in this video, but man, I don't know how else to film it. It's all just happening in the moment. So this connection right here, you can see how loose that is. I mean, it wiggles. So that is our poor connection. You can actually see some burn marks on that cover. I don't know when and where it was done. So I will go ahead and just remake the male bullet terminal there, and then I will put on new male bullet terminals on this wire. We'll strip it back just a little bit. And then I have a double female connector that I'll put on. And that will be all proper 3.5 mil or 3.9, whatever these are, connectors, and it will fit just right.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Let's go ahead and get rid of that. Okay, our fix is going to be this. So I'm actually going to use a splice connector. We'll take those two wires that run up to the control, and we will actually splice those down into one single 16 gauge, because I mean they go together anyway. And then we're just going to use one single crimp-on male butt connector or bullet connector, and that's just going to go back into the factory connector right there. So again, these go to the same spot anyway. It doesn't matter if we connect them or not. I guess if we wanted to, like if you wanted to disconnect one specific thing in the future, I mean, that could be a possibility, but For now, we're just going to tie them together and eliminate another potential wiggle point. So that will go to one wire, one single male connector, and that will be done. Oh, it's a little precarious to get these things loaded up, but they work exceptionally well. That is a very strong mechanical crimp. And we'll pair that with some quality heat shrink. Seal that up and keep it from actually contacting anything else. And we'll move on to the butt connector. There it is. All right, that is absolutely not going anywhere. I'm well aware this is a strange episode at this point. But what I think is funny is that I started this video out explaining how old motorcycles suck. And we have definitely maintained that. You could say by veering off course so many times, we've stayed on course. Okay, at this point, I'm going to take it back off the lift, which will, I don't know, maybe we'll have a problem with like the muffler or something like that at this point. Wheel it back out. I will just start it up. I'm going to turn the handlebars back and forth about 100 times, and then hopefully nothing happens. All right, this thing is done. Okay, it's done for right now. Customer's on his way to pick it back up, and we're gonna see how it goes. So I have a lot of confidence in it now. We just happen to hit a string of kind of isolated issues that all just kind of went back to back to back. Now, on one hand, yeah, it's really annoying that all of those issues popped up, and you know, it caused delays in riding and all kinds of stuff, a lot of confusion and a little extra time involved. But on the other hand, we got pretty lucky that all of those issues kind of showed their face while it was here. We're able to work through them. So I've just repaired all of the wiring up front in the headlight bucket. We've readjusted all the points. We've gone and mounted the coils correctly, and addressed the wiring issues there. So I think we're good to go. Knock on wood. I know this is a strange video. I hope you guys like this one. Definitely check out that other video that I mentioned where we diagnosed the headlight on Patty over there. That was also a good one. I show you guys exactly how to read a wiring diagram. It was a really helpful video. So anyway, I'm gonna wrap this one up. Stay tuned whenever we bring this thing back. Whenever we bring this thing back.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
So guess what? Yep, it's back again. So yet again, I had thought that I'd fix this thing and we had it running great. I actually brought it to the customer and we did another, like 5-6 miles on it or something. We went for a nice night cruise and it was running flawless. Next morning he goes to fire it up and it's just like, it's like down on power, kind of misfiring, sputtering, that kind of thing. So I went and picked it up and just trying to ride around the parking lot. It's like there's nothing there. And it's not a symptom of being down on, say, 1 and 4 or 2 and 3, like half the ignition, which would be, say, a points or a coil type issue. So all of the spark plugs look even, and this one's strange. So I'm going to look at, just the quality of spark on each cylinder real quick. And then I'm going to check power actually to the entire ignition system. So what I want to do is try to measure across the actual kill switch here up in the bars, and we'll see if that has any kind of an effect. If there's potentially a voltage drop, I don't know. That sucks. We're gonna figure it out though. And customer is leaning towards just going full electronic ignition. I don't really want to, because I know that these things can run well on factory stuff, so we just need to get to the bottom of it. Okay, right here is the main power into the right handlebar control. So we previously adjusted this thing by replacing this section. This wire right here is the ignition output, so the wire goes back down to your coils over there. I have my meter set on resistance. And hooking up the 2 wires, .1, 0.2 ohms, which is nothing. That's like the meter test leads right there. We flick our kill switch to the off position, goes open line. Same thing on both sides, and then back to the center. And still just no resistance. So what I'm going to do, need to unplug this, and then I'll replug that in, and then I want to check the actual voltage output from the switch. The spark looked good on all 4 cylinders, as far as it just being equal. So I really hope this isn't going to be some weird fuel system issue. All right, back with you. Got this thing set on voltage. So we are going to hook it up to our output side. Other end to green, or ground I should say, if we have enough hands. So this is going to require key on. .98 volts. So that seemed perfectly normal to me. Search continues. That'll do it. All right, I wired in a spare condenser. No more arcing. There we go. I think my mood is directly proportional to how well a bike runs. I'm telling you, whenever this thing is messing up, my soul is dying inside, especially when I give it back to the customer. But these are actually aftermarket condensers. They are of the cheap variety, so that is now our issue. it sucks. So I had another condenser here. I don't know what this is for, but I know it's of good quality. So put that on there and immediately stopped arcing on the actual point. So, you know, it immediately ran smoother too. So I know that's the issue. So 1 and 4 I know would probably eventually fail here soon too. So I think the ultimate answer for this bike, for this particular customer, is to go electronic ignition. I actually have that CB750 behind me, kind of a cafe racer that a customer brought in, and I have a feeling I'm going to push him towards that direction as well, just because he's not the type that's going to want to mess with that stuff. So, yeah, I think that's what we're going to do. What do you say we rob a condenser out of this old thing? Oh, it's so wadded up. Ugh. This hurts. I would argue that that is still good. So we're going to find out. All right, went ahead and installed the old condensers, and it runs great. So this one's definitely bad. This one technically did run, but for how long? So this is one to put like maybe in your back pocket or something like that, use it on a rainy day. So I think I'm gonna call the customer, let him know what's going on. He can ride this thing for right now, and then he's probably still gonna wanna go to electronic ignition on it. Understandably, it's just, you know, gives some headaches. So now there are multiple kits for these things. I have used the Charlie's Place in the past. It worked great. But this customer might be interested in something that includes new coils. So these are ultimately cheaper coils as well. So I know Dynatech, they make, or Dyna, they make a full-blown kit. And, you know, you get a quality coil and a quality electronic ignition. So we'll see how it goes. All right, this thing we can finally call done. What a nightmare. Old bikes suck. So yeah, I'm sure a lot of you guys have encountered something similar. I know this isn't the first time I've had one that's just simply fought me, but we persevered, we got there in the end, and realistically we didn't even buy a single part for it. So we just made adjustments and then replaced things with old components. So very interesting indeed. I know this video is a longer one that's just a lot of talking, so I don't apologize. I don't know what other way to film this, but yeah, just kind of recorded as I went in the moment. I know it's pretty random and stuff, but yeah, it was an adventure. But hopefully you guys like this video regardless. So please check the description. I'm going to actually link all of the videos on this bike, as well as some other ones that are helpful with maybe diagnosis and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm gonna leave you with some riding clips. So again, hope you guys like this video. Hope to see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.